Hello and welcome once again. My name is Isabel Sofia Diepa, pronouns she, her, hers. I am the engagement reporter for the Fresno Bee Education Lab. The Ed Lab, as we call it, includes 3 reporters and 1 editor. We work on reporting education stories in the Valley with a focus on educational attainment and solutions journalism. We've talked a lot about how K through 12 students have been affected by COVID-19. But universities also closed their doors 1 year ago. The release of vaccines and increased testing has opened up conversations about how to reopen our campuses. Additionally, COVID-19 has changed higher ed for the long term. For example, some colleges have been talking about offering more online classes. We have invited experts from higher education and from the Fresno Health Department to ask and answer some of your most pressing questions when it comes to higher ed in a post-COVID world. Our panelists today are Allison Garibay, a Fresno State ASI Senator, Keith Ford, President of State Student Federation of Teachers, Dr. Saul Jimenez Sandoval, Interim President at Fresno State University, and once again, we'd like to invite back Dr. Zweifler from the Fresno County Health Department and my co-moderator for today's event, our higher ed reporter, Ashley Pugh. We ask you to submit your questions and concerns. If you are not able to submit your questions beforehand, not to worry, we will also be covering questions towards the end of today's show, so be sure to leave them in the comment section. Without further ado, let's dive into our first question from Ashley Panu. Ashley?
Thank you, Isabel. So I'll just get right into it. This first question is for Dr. Saul. So COVID-19 has changed education as we know it. As we think about emerging from this pandemic, what are some areas that could remain a permanent fixture of learning in college life?
I think we will have to consider how the virtual plays an active role in our delivery of instruction. Here at Fresno State, over 70% of our faculty have received training in virtual delivery of instruction, but we also have professors across the university who have also recorded over 1 million hours of video. How will this video play into the active learning of our students in the future? I can imagine, for example, a professor letting the class know, please watch the video, read the material, come to class, I'll give you a quiz on both the reading and the material, and then really engage the students in a very high-powered, very high-leveled theoretical underpinning of what the material is about. Not so much the plot analysis, but really, what are the most valuable lessons that we can take from there. So I think that's going to be one area that will stay with us. The active role of technology and how does that technology plays, this bridges the gap within a lot of our students at Fresno State as well.
Thank you, Dr. Saul. And I'd like to direct the same question to you, Keith. What are some areas that could remain a permanent fixture and what may go back to normal?
I mean, it's a really good question. It's something that we've been grappling with for a while now. I think that Saul is absolutely right. There's a lot of content that we've had to generate, and thinking about where that's going to live and how that's going to continue to fit into curriculum as we go forward is going to be a really good conversation to have. In the community college space, and I'm not sure about the CSU, but in the community college, we're actually being mandated to increase our online offerings by at least 10% pre-COVID, from our pre-COVID numbers. So some of those curricular lifts that we've already done will be easily transitioned into those additional online offerings. I'd like to think also that we'd be able to find a way to accommodate our students with disabilities, our students with young children at home if they can't find a sitter. Maybe there's a way now that we can use what this Zoom year has taught us to reach and bridge those equity gaps in a more deliberate way than we've done so far. Thus far, and it's not to say that we haven't been acting purposefully, but thus far it's been all hands on deck and kind of learning as we go. And we've really in this past year we're gaining mastery over this, and now it's time to see what we can actually do in a more targeted sense.
Thanks, Keith. And this question is also for you. With that said, are instructors ready to return to the classroom, or are there still some hesitations with the virus?
That's thank you. There are still quite a few of us who are hesitant, but there's a far greater number who are ready to go back in any capacity, and myself included. It's for all that online and distance ed have allowed us to continue to do, right? Continue to provide quality education to our students. It's not the same, right? It's the relational contact that you are able to get with your students is just of an entirely different quality when you're face to face. And so if I had to put a number on it, I would say probably about 75% of our faculty within State Center are really, really anxious to get back. And the rest are tentative. They want to be safer. They have some pre-existing conditions. They have some legitimate concerns. And so we want to make sure that we do that as safely as possible.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Allison, I wanted to get this question to you because you're a student. Are there aspects of distance learning that that you or other students hope stay, and what parts do you hope return to normal?
I think students are very eager to get back. I know that we miss the social aspect of being alongside our friends and being face to face. We definitely miss that. So I know a lot of students are looking forward to getting the interaction that we so desperately miss. I think at the same time, maybe a few of us are feeling comfortable being able to speak more, listen to our peers, and just get out there. We don't feel like so many eyes are on us. So I feel like that would be a good aspect to keep, maybe just being able to speak up and someone listening.
Thank you, Allison. My next question is directed to Dr. Saul and to Dr. Zweffler, and it's about vaccinations for instructors. A lot of people are wondering, can colleges require students or instructors to be vaccinated before they're allowed on campus? And is that something that Fresno area colleges have looked at doing? And I want to give it to Dr. Saul first to go ahead first.
Yeah, the vaccine, as Dr. Seifler will attest, has been right now approved on an emergency basis. And because of that, we cannot require the vaccine on our campuses. The 23 campus system of the CSU is very clear that as long as the FDA does not fully approve the vaccine, and as long as it's on an emergency basis approval, we cannot require the vaccine for neither our students, nor our faculty, nor our staff. We highly encourage it, of course, moving forward, but it is not a requirement that we can impose upon our communities within the campus.
Thank you. And Dr. Zweifler, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to add, and I hope you can hear me. I'm sorry I'm having trouble with the audio element.
Looks like we lost Dr. Zweifler. But let's go ahead and move on. Back to you, Isabel.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Hopefully Dr. Zweifler can be able to get back on. So I have, my next question is actually for Dr. Saul for Keith. So we know that K through 12 schools must follow certain guidelines for classrooms, such as staying a minimum of 3 feet apart and mask wearing. And we want to know what kind of guidelines are there for higher education students. And we can start with Keith for what are the guidelines for Fresno City College first.
Sure. So the guidelines for the community college are ever changing, and quite a bit more so than K-12. But loosely, we are following them. I would say we're about a month behind them. So our guidelines are still 6 feet apart and masked, and we've got hand sanitizer and the wipes, the sanitizing wipes, everywhere that we're still doing instruction, because we still are actively doing instruction at quite a few different sites. I don't know if we will go to 3 feet of separation. But that's where we are now, 6 feet with masks and enhanced sanitation protocols.
Thank you, Keith. And I have the same question for Dr. Saul. What
Yes.
are some of the guidelines that Fresno State has for students who are coming in now in the spring and possibly into the fall?
Yeah, currently, just like Keith said, with Fresno City College, with Fresno State, we are currently with a 6 feet social distancing. But in the fall, we're looking at 3 feet because we have been receiving news both from the CSU's Chancellor's office as well as from the state that we are expected to reduce the 6 feet to 3 feet. So right now, we are actively pursuing 2 plans at Fresno State. One plan would be the 6 feet in case things, regress, but the other plan would be the 3 feet of social distancing. The 3 feet of social distancing, of course, gives us a lot more flexibility because it opens up more spaces for our students, and it brings more students on campus, basically speaking. So for the fall 2021 repopulation plan right now has both the 6 feet and then also the 3 feet moving forward to see which of these two is the one.
Thank you, Dr. Saul. And we're going to move on to our next subsection for today's discussion, financial aid. Financial aid is incredibly important for many low-income students to attend higher education. And recent data has shown less people are filling out the FAFSA compared to last year. What will financial aid look like post-COVID? That is our next topic, and we will be taking live questions. So if you have something you'd like to ask any of our panelists today, please drop your question in the chat. I'm going to pass it on to Ashley for our first question on financial aid. Ashley?
Thank you, Isabel. This question is for Dr. Sowell. So Fresno State received $52 million in federal coronavirus relief funds, and about $25 million of that will go to students. Who is eligible for these funds, and how is Fresno State going to help students who are not eligible for this money?
Actually, 95% of our students are eligible for that money, and then the other 5% that is not eligible, we found other means to also help our students. The 5% includes DACA students and also includes international students, but we found other sources within our revenue to actually help those students as well. You mentioned, the money that we've received. We have actually received 3 sets of pots of money. The first one came to us, which is CARES funding number 1. We gave students $16.4 million, which was 50% of what we received. The second is $52 million. Out of that, $25 million is going to go to the students. And then we are expecting then that the third round of money is going to be available to students, and that's going to include approximately $46 million to our students as well. So that $46 million includes both fall 2021 and spring 2022 monies for our students as well. And we've tiered the distribution of these funds pretty well. On top, we have students whose parents cannot provide and who have a pretty strong financial need. In the middle of it, though, we have students whose parents can provide some type of assistance to them, but they're sort of caught in between. They're not fully being supported by their parents, and at the same time, they also have some financial assistance. And then in the third part of it are the students whose parents are able to fully provide, but even those students are going to receive some type of assistance from Fresno State. So we have made sure that every single student receives the aid. For what reasons? We want to let students know that now is the time to concentrate and focus on their degrees. And we don't want it to be a financial issue that, has them drop out of school or has them postpone school at this time. Now is the time to be working on that degree. And we are expecting then that this financial contributions to them, these grants that will be given to them, will help them maintain those strong ties with Fresno State throughout the process.
Thank you. And a follow-up to that is how is the rest of the money being spent? Is it going to help repopulate the campus in the fall?
Yeah, in various ways, Ashley. So one of the very concrete ways that we've spent that money is by empowering faculty to be proficient within the virtual delivery. So grants for faculty, A lot of the faculty, like I said at the beginning, more than 70% of our faculty have taken this training. The other ways are very concrete ways. We are right now planning a series of classrooms within Fresno State that are going to be, taught face-to-face, but at the same time will have the capability, the hardware and the software that will be able to live stream at the same time simultaneously to students who cannot make it to campus for COVID-related reasons. So all of that money, right, all of that expenditure is going to be used. It's going to be drawn specifically from these other areas. Another way is the testing that we've done at Fresno State, the COVID-19 testing that we've done. All of that has also come from the CARES funding that we received as well.
Thank you, Dr. Saul. And this next question is for Allison. The campus has been shut off to most students for more than a year now. Are there some concerns that you've heard from students when it comes to access to resources such as financial aid or mental health?
Yes, absolutely. In my particular position on campus, I have direct contact with students, and a lot of them are worried about being at home where they have siblings and other family members where it can get quite loud. So we're trying to figure out how to help them with that. We do have technology services where we help students provide laptops, headphones, anything they may need, including hotspots for internet if they cannot afford that. However, many students sometimes find it difficult to get to campus or where to find those resources, how to make appointments for that and such. I know many students are missing the library currently. Those are pretty good study areas where we can focus, and I myself used that a lot while I was there. So I know that they're missing that, and hopefully we can find ways to accommodate maybe small study areas or such.
Thanks, Allison. And back to you, Isabel.
Thank you, Ashley. So we're actually going to take a live question real quick from YouTube. This question is going to be for both Dr. Saul and for Keith. This question is from Anthony Ramos. And he asks, what options do students have available if they have pre-existing conditions or do not feel safe to return in the fall? Dr. Saul, if you can start first,
Sure.
And then we can pass it on to Keith.
Yeah, absolutely. So for students with pre-existing conditions, we will do everything within our power to help them continue with their education. There are some areas, though, that will be out of our control. For example, nursing is very specific in its accreditation processes and also in its demands for face-to-face instruction. Right now at Fresno State, we have about 11% of our classes face-to-face, and this 11% reflects directly the demands that we have with the accrediting bodies that tell us that we cannot substitute face-to-face instruction for virtual. It just cannot be done. So for certain areas, there will be some classes that have to be taught face-to-face. Nursing is one of them. Another one would be some of the STEM fields, some of the labs that have to be taught face-to-face, again, because of the specificity of the discipline on the one hand, or because the accrediting bodies do not allow us to provide the virtual instruction. For the most part, though, across the university, across the board, in practically every single major, we will probably have classes that the student can take that will allow them to continue with their education and not pause the education. I don't foresee, for example, that a student will have, 2 classes, and out of these 2 classes, both have to be taught face-to-face. I'm sure that we can find, at least one class that will be able to be taught virtually. So we will do everything within our power to accommodate the students' needs. If there's a valid COVID-19 reason, absolutely we will be there. The same thing with our professors. Our professors, if they have COVID-19 related reasons, we will also accommodate for their needs as well, so that they're not forced to be on campus in that situation.
Thank you, Dr. Saul. And Keith, just to reiterate the question that Anthony Ramos asked, what options do students have available if they have pre-existing conditions or do not feel safe to return in the fall?
Well, my answer is very similar to Saul's in that there are a few courses that we offer district-wide that have to be taught face-to-face, such as nursing, as Saul mentioned, and some of our other CTE classes. It's very hard to teach welding in a distance environment, right? And so those classes do have to be face to face. However, we're really only talking about one more semester. I mean, knock on wood, right? We're going to be in this hybrid middle space for one more semester, and hopefully we'll be completely back by spring of 22. And hopefully I didn't just jinx it. But there are plenty of course offerings for students who have pre-existing conditions or who are just worried about coming back. There are plenty of courses for them to take a full load in the fall that will be offered in a hybrid form or just full online capacity. So there really is no reason at all for a student to put their education on pause any more than they already have. Right, this past year has been disruptive enough, and as I said earlier, we've really learned how to master this space, and we've gotten much more nuanced in our educational approaches. So fall of 21 is going to look very, very different from fall of 20, and definitely from this current semester, and it's going to look very different in dynamic and positive ways.
Thank you, Keith. So this next question was sent to us beforehand by Eric Haddon from Fowler, and I'm going to direct it to Dr. Saul. And Eric asks, a current cause célèbre is student loan forgiveness. While this issue is rightfully a part of the national conversation, I rarely, if ever, hear any debate about the other side of the equation, rising tuition costs. Nationally, the average cost of college tuition has risen 4 times faster than the rate of inflation over 10 years. As key leaders, how do you plan to deal with rising costs that, if left unimpeded, will make college unattainable for all with the highest income thresholds?
That's a really good question. Thank you, Isabel, for that. And given that I grew up in Fowler, I appreciate the question as well. Having said that, though, I'll give you some context of where we are at Fresno State. Our students are really hardworking students, meaning that most of our students, if not all, have a part-time job or have many times a full-time job as well. Our students leave Fresno State on average with a debt of about $14,000 for the entire undergraduate BA degree. That's a phenomenal number. And compared to the statistics that we see across the country, that's actually quite enviable as well. That goes in part, though, to the following. Currently, Fresno State has the lowest fees out of any of the CSUs within California, the lowest fees. And that goes because we have been very conscious of the rising cost of education. We have also been very conscious that our students, they get transformed whenever they come to Fresno State. So we want to make it accessible to them. I don't foresee that the chancellor will approve any hikes in the tuition in the coming year, or in the coming years for that matter. I just don't see that. The legislature is also on board with this, and I'm sure that the governor is too. So as far as that is concerned, I don't see that in the future we will be having a conversation about, tuition hikes, or about, how it is that Fresno State is not fully accessible. I believe that our students, it's not inexpensive. I'm not saying that either, but in the grander scheme of things, within the national context, an education from Fresno State is both affordable and transformative at the same time.
Thank you, Dr. Saul. And I would like to direct this question to Keith as well. What are some ways that Fresno City colleges are looking to make college accessible?
Sure, thank you. And I'd actually just like to put an addendum onto what Saul just said. An education at Fresno State, and so full disclosure, I'm an alumnus of Fresno State. An education at Fresno State is also a really good investment in your future. So not only is it an affordable education, it's a quality education that does get you a job in competitive fields. So definitely very, very much worth it. At the community college level, I don't think there's going to be any fee hikes, and we've actually, in the last few years, there have been some really exciting legislative gains that have allowed us to offer free education for new students. First, for the first year, this was, I believe this started in 2019, and now it's expanded to the first 2 years. So it is entirely possible for a student at the community college level, if they stay on track with their student educational plan, to get through their full associate's degree for free, no tuition burden. Now, that doesn't cover textbooks, and that doesn't obviously cover cost of living, which is why we're also looking at, we have a faculty initiative to look at OER, which is open educational resources. And these are free textbooks, free online available textbooks that that all you need is to be able to access them via the internet. And those we're hoping will also greatly lower the cost of attendance. And then we continue to expand our efforts to add paid internship opportunities. So as Saul mentioned, a lot of our students, in fact, probably a higher quantity of our students at the community college work full time. A lot of them are returning students, parents, and so there's a lot more burden on them to be out in the working world while they're in an educational space. And so we, within State Center, have been trying to continually add more internship opportunities that are paid. So not only are the students getting their education, they're getting job experience, and they're getting paid for it as well.
Thank you, Keith. And actually, just as an FYI for anyone who's interested in wanting to learn more about open textbooks, Ashley Panu recently did a really great story. We'll post it in the comment section here in a little bit once we find it. But we're going to move on to our next segment, and we want to explore student enrollment. Colleges are seeing less student enrollment, and we're wondering what that means for Fresno. I'm going to pass it over to Ashley for our very first question for this next segment. Ashley?
Thanks, Isabel. This question is for Keith. Community college enrollment has especially been affected by the pandemic, and our local colleges are not immune from that. How is the decrease in students affecting faculty, and what is the college doing, if anything, to help get students to apply?
Well, as you know, Ashley, this is a question that's near and dear to my heart. Enrollment has really dropped, especially this last year. I believe for the total academic year, State Center is down 21%, if I'm not mistaken, and that means a considerable amount of classes were cut, and a considerable amount of our part-time faculty were cut. They lost quite a few of them lost all of their income. And I know that this happened also at the CSU level. So for those faculty who have lost their jobs or have lost part of their income, we launched the SCFT Adjunct Relief Fund on GoFundMe last month. And to date, we've gathered donations in excess of about $22 million, 22,000. It would be great if it were 22 million. $22,000. We're hoping for 50,000 so that we can provide direct cash benefits to those displaced teachers. As to the second part of your question, how we're looking to boost enrollment, we're advertising, we're doing events like these and trying to really push the two-year free college initiative that, as I said, has just begun to be rolled out, and trying to reach out to students to make them understand that taking a break, taking a gap year, taking a gap 2 years really isn't in their best interest. And this is particularly the case at the community college level. A gap year at the community college level turns into a gap 5 years. And the students that we serve are primarily working class, lower middle class, and working poor. And we even have a fairly high quantity of homeless students. We can't afford, those students can't afford to miss a year, to delay themselves a year, because that kind of delay causes ripples that will cost them many, many more years of their lives. And I can actually speak to this with a measure of personal experience as well. I had to drop out of the community college when I was going to school there, and it took me 7 years to finish my associate's degree. And so that is that is a fate that I would save our students from.
Yeah, thank you for that insight, Keith. And Dr. Sowell, I wanted to direct that question also to you because although enrollment is steady at Fresno State, applications to the CSU are down by about 5% this year, we've heard. And the Central Valley already has some of the highest numbers of people in the state without high school diplomas. So who is most affected by this decrease, and what is Fresno State doing to entice more people to apply?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ashley. And even though we have the largest freshman and transfer class at Fresno State right now, fall 2020 was the largest we've ever seen. And even though we also expect that fall 2021 will have a pretty large class as well, I am concerned that the low numbers within the community college are going to sooner or later catch up to us. Because of this, I've been really active engaging our Office of Institutional Effectiveness into really going through the numbers. And the numbers, are very clear to us. In 2017 and 2018, nearly 80% of graduates within Fresno Unified School District, only the Fresno Unified School District, were enrolling in higher education. So that's 80%. By 2020, it drops to 53%. And these students are actually eligible to apply to the CSU. They're actually eligible to apply, to other four-year universities as well, but they're choosing not to do that. The community colleges as well within our region, like Keith said, suffered tremendously. Whereas in 2017, 45% of the graduating class within Fresno Unified School District enrolled at a community college, meaning Fresno City College, Reedley College, or Clovis Community College. This trend remained the same until 2020, where only 29% of the graduating class chose to enroll. So these trends are they're very worrisome to me, because sooner or later we will not have these bumper crops of students enrolling at Fresno State. We will not have these large numbers of students enrolling at Fresno State. It'll catch up to us in the long run. I've been collaborating pretty strongly right now with a campaign that I want to launch between our office, between our university, also within the Fresno County Office of Education, with Jim Jovino there. How is it that we can convey then, and also with our community colleges, how can we convey the value of an education, of higher education? How can we tell students, for example, that if you get a degree from community college and then continue on to get a degree at Fresno State, your life truly opens up dramatically to opportunities that were not there before. So we are the ones, the onus is on us to really convey this value on the one hand, and then on the other hand, to really showcase the breadth and scope of the impact Fresno State has in every single facet of our Valley life. So moving forward, we plan to really, bring home what the value of a university degree is, of a community college degree is, because approximately 45% of our students right now are coming from community college. This hits home pretty closely to us as well. So it's both, fostering a very strong sense of the value of education within the community college, but then also how is it that with a four-year university degree, their life will just be, changed forever.
Thank you, Dr. Saul. And I wanted to direct that also for Allison. As part of ASI and also a first-generation student, do you have thoughts on the fact that fewer people may be going to college, and how important is it for you to finish college?
It's extremely important for me to finish college. My grandparents on my father's side were farm workers, and I know when I talk to my grandmother about finishing college and the aspirations I have for my future, she just cries. And so I really would encourage anybody to come and any way possible for them to finish college, enroll in college, and do anything possible to get them here. I think it is concerning, though, hearing that there's low enrollments and lesser drop from those data and statistics. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And back to you, Isabel.
Thank you so much, Ashley. So we're going to move on to some questions that you all submitted beforehand, as well as some of the live questions that are in the chat. So if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the chat as we go through them now. Our first question is from Larissa Mercado Lopez from Fresno. And Larissa asks, this year has made us reflect deeply on practices and policies that are and are not working. As we move forward, what are some practices that we need to keep, and what are some that we need to discontinue? I'd like to start with Dr. Saul, and then I would love for Keith to let us know how he feels as well about this.
I think the practices that we've established clearly the value of technology in education. How do we leverage that moving forward? How do we leverage those million hours of video that we've produced? How does that become part of our curriculum? And how is it that that is going to be part of the DNA, moving forward of a student's educational journey, in which a student will be an active participant of this journey to become, someone, to become this professional after their career at Fresno State. So that's clearly a huge value for us as well. Another value I think that has really come to the foreground is, how do we take care of each other? How do we reach out to each other? How do we talk about mental health? I formed a task force here on mental health called the Alegria Task Force that is currently exploring ways in which we can simply come together, to have informal conversations with each other. Because with this pandemic, what we found is that the informal conversations, the experiences of, being at Fresno State with each other is actually what makes Fresno State so special. Sure, I get a degree. The degree is great. I have all of this knowledge, but alongside with the knowledge is the experience of being with my peers, is the experience of dialoguing with my professors, is the experience of being, with each other and saying, how do we come together as a community of scholars, as a community of students, as a community of staff? And how do we then actively participate in forging that next stage of excellence that Fresno State represents within our region? So that's going to be very important. I think communication has come to the foreground like never before. And it's not the same type of communication, right? It's not these long messages with long paragraphs that if a student like Allison, or anybody else sees, or even me, if I see long paragraphs, I say, wow, I'm going to have to invest, a lot of time in reading that. But how do we streamline education through videos and through sensitive messages that really focus on what's real and really reach out to someone and say, I'm here for you, I see you, and I appreciate, what you're doing for our students and for our Fresno State as well. So I think that's going to stay. What is not going to stay, I think, is going to be this passive notion that the university just organically grows as it goes along. We'll see how it goes. I think we have to be strategic. We have to be actively strategic about where do we go with Fresno State in this next stage? How do we leverage, for example, the connections we have with industry so that the students can have these experiential learning that really, cement what it is that they're learning in the classroom? How do we move forward then to coming up with areas that seem to be, completely disconnected with each other, but they're not? How do we connect, for example, a criminology major with teaching? How do we connect, for example, the health fields with art? Or how do we connect, an engineering with a humanist? I think more and more we will see how it is that we will approach learning in a holistic way and in an active way of both, consuming knowledge, learning language, knowledge on the one hand, but then actively producing knowledge at the same time as well.
Thank you, Dr. Saul. And the same question is for you, Keith. This year has made us reflect deeply on practices and policies that are and are not working. As we move forward, what are some practices that we need to keep, and what are some that we need to discontinue?
I mean, I think that a good crisis exacerbates paradoxes, right? It sharpens and reveals gaps and cracks in the system. And so there's one thing that I'm grateful for is that the pandemic has allowed us to see clearly, much more clearly than before, how many of our students are hurting. And it's also made them more honest with us and more likely to reach out, and made us better as faculty and staff at reaching out and communicating with them, and learning to be overtly compassionate. Right? There have been various different institutional arms at the community college level, just like at the CSU level, to reach out to these students. But oftentimes, right, if they don't reach out to us first, we don't know that they're there. We don't know that they need help. So our institutional research people have been doing an excellent job gathering data, and our faculty have been doing such a wonderful job at reaching out and, like I said, being overtly compassionate. They already were compassionate people, right? Educators by nature want to see people do well with their lives. But we're beginning to see, because of these exacerbated paradoxes, because of these more obvious gaps, we've begun to learn how it is that our students are hurting, how it is that we need to reach out to them, and how it is that we can better help them. So that I would like to see that stay, and I think that it's useful. One of the very simple demonstrations of that, I think, is the way that we conduct office hours as faculty. In a pre-COVID world, the professor would go to his office, his or her office, unlock the door, open the door, and stay there for the prescribed amount of time. I would like to see that come back. I would love to be able to go back to my office. Thank you very much. But I would also like to be able to continue to do Zoom office hours, so that my students who perhaps live in Fowler, live in Reedley, live in Oakhurst, and don't have reliable transportation, can still get face-to-face interaction with the professors during their office hours. So I think that's definitely something that needs to stay. What needs to go? I don't want this to sound too controversial, right? But I don't want the faculty to fall into this idea, and I don't want the administration to fall into the idea that all we're doing is providing content, right? That instruction is more than just delivering content. It's about building relationships. It's about mentoring your students, and about really helping them through various different difficulties in their lives that sometimes have very little to do with the subject matter that you're teaching them. So I would like to see that come back. And I think that the online space, for all of its nuance that we've been able to acquire, it's harder to have that kind of mentorship relationship in this space.
Thank you, Keith. And actually, I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about this, Allison. As a student, what are some things that you feel you would like to see, to continue seeing, and what do you think has to go?
I think what I love to see, again, like Keith was saying, is just office hours. I feel so connected to my professors, honestly. In the past, I would never take the extra time to go and talk to them. But now I have the ability to just kind of sit in an environment where I feel safe and protected and speak one-on-one to my professor. And I also know that my professor is going to talk back to me, and that it's going to be caring and resourceful when I speak to them. In one of my classes, I'm actually a social work major, and we had a project called a treasure chest. So each student would take a shoebox, and we would make something on the outside of what we look like to the general population, or what our friends think of us. And when we open it up, it's what's inside of us. And so I was able to see pictures of my classmates, some of their fears. One of them, I didn't even know she owns a bakery. I would have probably never known that in person, because who knows, she would have been, 10 seats away from me, but now she's right in front of my face. So I love getting that personal interaction with those fun projects. But again, when we go back in person, maybe something that would be lost is that interaction, being far, maybe not feeling protected or be safe and feeling embarrassed to speak up. And so I think that's what I want to stay but not lose. And maybe something that would be gone, I suppose, feeling just anxious. I don't know. There's a lot of things I want gone, of course. I want to be back to seeing my friends and everything like that. But I think we need to take it step by step and stride by stride.
Thank you, Allison. So this next question was sent to us by Rain Chamberlain from Fresno. And Rain asked, the ways that online classrooms have been created has made for rigid and narrow accessibility options. Is there a team of people looking into how to quickly expand the flexibility of options for online learning? So we're going to direct this first to Dr. Saul, and then we can direct it to Keith.
I'm not sure I understand fully the question, Isabel, but I can speak to how we have made virtual instruction accessible to all students. So we have classes, for example, that are synchronous. These classes meet on a certain day at a certain time, and it's a fixed schedule. We also have classes that are asynchronous, meaning that the professors do not have a fixed day or a fixed time, but they meet with the students for office hours to ask or answer any questions that they might have, and to really keep up with how it is that the students are doing. What we found more than anything is that there's a lot of flexibility within the virtual world, because you don't have to leave home to actually log on. But at the same time, the surveys that we sent out in fall 2020 indicated that our students are really thirsting, like Allison said before, they're thirsting for the informal conversations, for that 10 minutes prior to class, where the professor is in the classroom and the professor is setting up her laptop or whatever it is, and she's scanning the room and saying, how's it going with this, or how's it going with that. That actually, it's valuable because it sets the tone of how the class is going to be, come together and say, now we're going to learn, and now we're really going to go to the lesson. So more than anything, our students are craving that these informal situations with which to connect with each other and with the professor as well. But by and large, I think when a professor is teaching synchronous, meaning Monday at 10 o'clock, I'm always there and I'm teaching with my students, that works really well because the connection is right there. When a professor is teaching asynchronous, the challenge is to make a meaningful connection with our students that transcends the screen and that lets our students know, I know you. It goes back to Allison's point, right? It's that box. I know about you and I care for you. And are you struggling? And if you're struggling, why don't you come to my office hour so we can review, whatever it is that is stumping you. So it's really reaching across and letting our students know, I'm here for you. And I know who you are, and I care for you, and I want you to succeed more than anything. I think that's really going to be the challenge moving forward with these classes that are going to be asynchronous. And that was the challenge before with the online classes that we had prior to the pandemic as well. So that is where we're going to refine, that connection and that personal outreach to our students from each of the faculty. Like Keith also said, that is crucial moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Saul. And directing the same question to you, Keith, is there a team of people looking into how to quickly expand the flexibility of options for online learning?
So I will admit I'm a little bit out of my depth on this question, but I do know that we have instructional designers at each of our colleges that will do accessibility reviews if they're asked to. And then the other way that we've tried to get at this issue is by doing faculty-led presentations and trainings every semester, at the beginning of every semester, on accessibility. So if I understand the question correctly, we're talking about ways to open up the distance ed space for the differently abled students, right? So if we have
Yes.
If we have a student who is colorblind, for example, Fresno City College just overhauled their Canvas site so that Fresno City College, their one of their base colors is red, but it's not a colorblind accessible red, and now it is. And so we've been making these sort of micro changes to Canvas to make things more accessible to people like that, and then also, as I said, working with discipline experts within the faculty on how better to deliver instruction to our deaf and hard of hearing students, and our other differently abled students. A colleague of mine at Fresno City College has been working specifically within the English program on this, and so while there's not a designated team per se, there are quite a few discipline specialists and experts who have degrees in disability studies, and who are working on this to improve that, those old educational realities, to make those better for those students.
Thank you, Keith. And we have one final live question, and I'm going to direct this to Dr. Selitz, from Anthony Ramos again. And he asks, how does the panel respond to the teachers' union's stance towards the 3 feet guidelines? I know that, Dr. Selitz, you said that it would be 3 feet in the fall. And how does this factor with the spread of the new COVID variants in the Valley?
Yeah, I think what we have to understand more than anything, and I wish that Dr. Zweifler were with us so that he can confirm this, is that a vaccine protects you from COVID, from getting to the hospital. I have spoken to a lot of healthcare professionals who have confirmed that if a person, contracts COVID while vaccinated, it is very likely that person will not end up in the hospital because they've already been protected. Their immune system is already ready for the virus. We are moving forward with guidance from the Chancellor's office. We're moving forward with guidance from the Governor's office as well, and also we have a very close relationship with our Fresno Health County health officials. We don't do anything without consulting them. And at the same time, we don't do anything without meeting and conferring with our unions as well. So our unions are also part of the dialogue that we move forward together. The plans for the 3 feet, obviously, we have to meet and confer with our union still. Given that this is the guidelines that we'll be receiving from the Governor's office and also from the Chancellor's office, that does state, somewhat that it's a good direction to go. That's one part. The other part is that we will be in a very good position from what I hear as well, as far as vaccines are concerned. I'm planning right now to open a vaccination site at Fresno State for students exclusively, so that the students can come to Fresno State and get vaccinated, because we want to make it accessible to them. We want to say, this is Fresno State, this is your home, come and get your vaccine with us as well. So we're planning this again with the county, and we're planning it as well with Children's Hospital. So we're doing everything possible to alleviate all of these factors that might negatively affect us from being, mostly face-to-face in the fall. But of course, it's all a process. We don't decide things in a bubble, and we don't decide things on our own. We always decide in consultation with various groups, including the students, including the faculty, including staff members, and of course, it includes also the unions moving forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saul. That is pretty much all of the time that we have for today. I'm really sorry that Dr. Zweifler, he was having some connectivity issues, and that is something else that we have actually reported on here in the Valley. We do have the digital divide is very real here. So that's we did not get to touch on that in this conversation, but I know that that's something that a lot of students have also struggled with as well. So thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining us today. This has been a really insightful conversation, and thank you all for tuning in. The Ed Lab relies on donations. To learn more about how to donate and to support our work, visit fresnob.com/edlab. Also, be sure to find us on social media. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to chat. Follow me on Twitter at Isabel Estiepa and our higher ed reporter, Ashley Panu, at Ashley Panu, ASHLEIGHPANOO, and at the Fresno Bee at Fresno Bee. I want to once again give a giant thank you to all our panelists and for you all. Till next time.